and couriers.
The curtain came down on this year's ABSA Off-Road Championship with the RFS Magaliesburg 400 based once again at the sprawling Tarleton International Raceway Complex, midway between Krugersdorp and Magaliesburg on the West Rand.
Championship issues going all the way to the wire in both the production and special vehicle categories once again underlined the competitive nature of the ABSA series, which ranks among the toughest in the world. It was an event charged with potential for big drama.
To help ease the tension, motorcycle wizard Brian Capper was on hand to keep off-road enthusiasts entertained with his you-have-to-see-to-believe antics on a motorcycle. Capper is a world-class entertainer, with his array of trick-riding stunts keeping an appreciative audience constantly amazed and amused.
For more than 30 years, Tarleton International Raceway has been the spiritual home of South African drag racing. The complex, owned and operated by the legendary Mick van Rensburg, is a world-class facility. It's also home for muscle cars and motorcycle enthusiasts. With some of Tarleton's regular competitors on hand to show the off-roaders the ropes, the opportunity to indulge in a little fun on the drag strip was just too good to miss. A prize fund of R5,000 put up by RFS Managing Director Chris Deploy added a competitive edge to the proceedings.
Top fuel dragsters stopped the clocks at around 6 or 7 seconds for the quarter-mile dash. The off-road cars were not quite in that league, with the fastest time and 2,500 Rand eventually going to Nardus and Louis Albert, with the only sub-15-second run of the day in the Rapsabat.
Motorcycle trick shows and a little fun on the drag strip provided light-hearted diversions for the off-road fraternity, but could not completely erase an undercurrent of tension to the countdown for the RFS Magaliesburg 400. With 7 crews in with a mathematical chance of winning the production vehicle title and a family battle raging in the special vehicle category, there was more important business to be taken care of. Retirement Fund Solutions is a financial services company with a strong motorsport sponsorship pedigree, and for Managing Director Chris Deploy, it was shaping up as an exciting weekend.
It's quite exciting. We expect to do well. I made a joke this morning. I said the only way to win it is to sponsor an event, but we'll see how it goes this weekend. We've got honours with the new V8 X3. We'll see how it goes, yes.
With just 10,5 points separating the first 6 crews in the Production Vehicle Championship, anything could happen, with reigning champions Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst part of the mix.
Yeah, it's interesting. The championship is wide open. 7 people, 7 cars, 7 drivers, teams actually that can still win it. So it's going to be interesting.
In the Baden Tyre Services Racing Camp, Thomas Rundle had his sights set on becoming the youngest driver to win the Production Vehicle Championship.
You know, what I've done is, it's 3 races for me this weekend. It's the prologue, lap 1 and lap 2. So we're not worrying about tomorrow, we're worrying about today. Try and see if we can get up front after the prologue, and then we take it again tomorrow.
Team Castrol Toyota were fresh from a test session in Namibia, with both factory cars given special dispensation to run in Dakar Rally specifications.
Well, as you can see from the vehicle, it has a shorter nose, which is obviously for dune driving. We've had a few niggles throughout the year, which we've fixed, and a lot of damper testing for the dune and rocky conditions. So all in all, ready for 2012.
In an exciting climax to the season, 7 crews had a mathematical chance of winning the Production Vehicle Championship, with defending champions Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst topping the points table in their Team Ford Ranger.
The draw by seeded crews for start positions on the Donaldson Prologue is generally a light-hearted affair, with teams hoping to avoid being drawn first on the road. Team Castrol star Anthony Taylor had a wry smile after pulling number 1 out of the hat. Taylor has a history of drawing first place, and it meant he and co-driver Chris Birkin would act as trailblazers for the crews starting behind them. Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux crew Gary Bertholdt and Andre Vermeulen drew second place, and Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst third, with the Donaldson Prologue results determining start positions for the race the next day.
The route for the Donaldson Prologue covered 60 kilometers that would give crews a taste of things to come during the next day's race. From Dalton, the route headed west towards Sluis and Syferbult along the ridges of the Sluis Rankies. Competitors then returned to Dalton with the route taking in Karel's Quarry. The Donaldson Prologue is a race within a race, with a good start position a major advantage in a field of more than 50 cars. Since joining the Premier SP class ranks midway through the season, Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus have been a revelation. The Wolmranstad crew again opened a few eyes by coming home 15 seconds ahead of reigning champs Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst in the factory Team Ford Ranger. Third fastest were Anthony Taylor and Chris Birkin, who were a further 9 seconds adrift in the Castrol Toyota Team Hilux, with the V8 engine sounding glorious in the Northwest Province countryside.
The versatile Anthony Taylor was looking for a hat-trick of wins on the RFS Magaliesburg 400 after winning in 2009 and 2010 with co-driver Robin Houghton. Taylor and Birkin had 13 seconds to spare on surprise championship contenders Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux in the international truck Toyota Hilux. The Northwest crew had only 2 seconds to spare over veterans Hannes Grobler and Henny Tristege, out for the first time in the RFS BMW X3, now fitted with a V8 petrol engine. After winning their opening event of the season, Grobler and Tristege fell on hard times, and a decision was taken to replace the diesel power unit with a petrol engine.
The Dalton area is a rich and diverse farming region, with pastoral scenes disturbed by the sound of high-powered race cars. Championship contenders Terence Marsh and George Smallberger were only about 2 kilometers into the route when they managed to deposit the Regent Racing Nissan Navara right on its side.
A band of spectators was soon on hand to lend a helping hand to try and push the Nissan Navara back onto its wheels.
Still okay, Benny?
There's a tow rope in the back box.
You guys okay?
Yeah, they're okay.
Somebody needs to get a tow rope for the next car to pull us over.
But it wasn't an easy job. The next car just happened to be Regent Racing teammates Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson, who weren't much interested in Marsh and Smallberger's predicament. The Northwest pair of Malcolm Koch and Johan Burger were also not interested in lending a helping hand, and it eventually took a concerted and well-orchestrated effort by spectators to get the Nissan Navara back on 4 wheels.
Let's go! Here we go! Water.
It's called cooperation.
The Baden racing pair of Thomas Rundle and former South African co-drivers champion Johan Moore was also part of the championship mix, with Rundle showing tremendous car control as the pair pushed hard for a good time. Rundle and Moore started the day lying 4th in the championship, 7 points behind the leaders. Their early impetus was halted by a puncture, which was to cost them time, with clutch and gearbox problems also adding to a frustrating prologue for the pair. There were no such problems for reigning champions Dion Venter and Ian Palmer, who led the Class D contingent in the 4x4 Megaworld Toyota Hilux. Free Staters Kobus van Tonder and Freddie Krill came up with one of their best performances in the Unifreight Ford Ranger, and Louis Weichelt and Francis Boersma produced a solid performance to clinch a top 10 place in the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser running in Class D.
Local farmers had inside information on where to find the best spectator points and were enjoying a break from their daily grind. There wasn't much to enjoy for Duncan Voss and Rob Howie in the second Team Castrol Toyota Hilux. Former South African champion Voss and Howie were another championship-chasing crew hit by an early puncture and finished just outside the top 10. Henny de Klerk in only his second off-road race and Keith Solomon were only 7 seconds behind the factory Toyota in the LA Sport entry, and there were also problems for Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen in their Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux. Behind them, a steady performance took Australian resident Cliff Weichelt and Johan Smallberger into second place in Class D in the second of the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser entries.
After winning 2 of the last 3 races, Dirk Putter and Koos Claessens were the formed team in Class E. Claessens had the co-driver title in the bag, and the pair were again on top of their game in the Zizwe Toyota Hilux to post a time around 2 minutes quicker than the 4x4 Megawheel Toyota Hilux of teenage crew Jason Venter and Vincent van Alleman. The youngsters have done a great job this season in their rookie year and had around a minute to spare over the more experienced Diederik Hutting, who went into the race leading the Drivers' Championship, and Buck Cilliers in the Transcore Toyota Hilux.
Back at race headquarters at Taunton International Raceway, it was time for post-mortems, and hard-working technical crew were faced with problems of various proportions. For the lucky ones, it was a case of wash and polish and checking the oil and petrol. The not-so-lucky would burn the midnight oil.
Yeah, we went out, I must say, this was quite nice. We caught up to Gary just like 2Ks. I said to Jaap, yes, I think we made a mistake, but didn't we take a shortcut? Yes, because we were on Gary's tail then. We were in his dust for about 20 Ks, and luckily then he moved over. So from there on it was quite nice, but I must say there's lots of rocks that's hide away in the grass and in the dust and all that. So I must say we must drive with the head in this race.
I must say, pulling number 1 this morning, I was a bit concerned, but we kept it nice and clean, didn't get any punches, and third, 30 seconds off Chris. It's going to be a good race tomorrow, that's for sure.
After we only started the motor like yesterday, I'm reasonably happy with what we've done today, and the temperatures on the car is very good. We'll push on probably a little bit harder tomorrow. It's for us a test, basically, this race. We didn't have time to test the car before the race, and it's our event, and we'd like to do well on it for RFS.
Well, we went out, let me tell you, the Bucky's game, Mark gave me a beautiful car. It went well, felt as if it was pulling like an SP, and out there it was my type of racing. I like fast races. It's just if you make a mistake, you've got big trouble.
On the special vehicle front, it was a case of 2 brothers and 2 cousins and a former champion fighting it out for the overall and Class A championships. Reigning champion Cully Silwald and his brother Herman were involved in a battle with Evan Hutchison in the fight for the driver's title, with the co-driver title a straight fight between cousins Quinton and Vichat Silwald. The Class P titles and the Class B co-drivers championships were also up for grabs in what had all the makings of a dramatic finish to the season.
Reigning champion Cully Silwald was under no illusions about the task that lay ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. We like to stay on top of our game, meaning that we'd like to not slow down. But then, you've got to consider it's the last one, so it's going to be difficult. But we will try and get a good prologue. See if we can't get away in the first 10, let's say, and then we'll take it from there.
Over at the Motorride pits, there was a little bit of tension creeping into proceedings, with Evan Hutchison well aware that what was needed was nothing short of a win.
A little bit nerve-wracking. I was thinking about it for long and hard last night. The thoughts go running through your mind, and I think it's a good thing we've come to the end of the year. It's the last race, and that the result is going to be determined. 2 of our championships I've won on the last event of the year, so we've got a chance. We have to try and take that chance.
Reigning champions Cully and Quinton Silwald held a points advantage going into the race, and 7th place would be enough to clinch back-to-back titles for the Palabora-based pair. The 5 top-seeded special vehicle crews also draw for start positions on the Donaldson Prologue, with David Whiteland standing co-driver Etienne Besaidnout drawing the number 1 position on the road. The Motorride-backed father and son crew of Nick and Ryan Harper drew the number 2 slot, with championship leaders Cully and Quinton Silwald 3rd car away in the elegant fuel bat.
The first skirmish in the final battle of the year was won by Evan Hutchison and Dani Stassen in their 4x4 Motorite Revo. Stassen missed an event earlier in the year, and that saw the Nelspruit car dealer fall out of the Co-Drivers' Championship race. With the 4x4 Motorite Revo well suited to the conditions, Hutchison and Stassen scored an early psychological victory. With a clean run and no punctures or mechanical issues, the Motorite pair eked out a 20-second advantage that saw them qualify in pole position for the race. Herman and Richard Soerwald rescued their championship chances with a solid second place on the Himan Auto 400, and the Soerwald Racing SVR crew were right where they wanted to be on the prologue. Behind the two special vehicle championship contenders, the father and son crew of Nick and Ryan Harper took third place in the Motorite Bat and were looking for a good result to round off what had been a disappointing season for the pair.
The KwaZulu-Natal pairing of Clint Gibson and Gary Campbell were a solid fourth in the Gibson Racing Porter and had 14 seconds to spare over Brett Parker and VZ van Sale, who went into the weekend coming off a solid result in the Sizanani Jimco on the Human Auto 400. Only 4 seconds behind the Jimco were the experienced Nardus Alberts and son Louis, who were making only their third appearance of the season in the Rapsa Bat. In another tight situation, the Rapsa crew were just 3 seconds ahead of Johan van Staden and James Rousseau in the latest spec Bat running in Atlas Copco colours.
The husband and wife team of Marius and Jolinda Fourie were brimming with confidence after an overall win on the Himan Auto 400, with the PHB Bat leading the Class P contingent. 2 wins in 3 races had brought the Fouries within sniffing distance of the Class P title, with the pair pulling out a 15-second gap over Gerard and Quibby Duplessis, who were making their first appearance of the season in the ex-Herman Soerwald Zarco Magnum. Class P Championship leaders Archie Rutherford and Mike Lawrenson were next up in the Regent Racing Jimco, with the pair 2 seconds behind the Duplessis and 7 seconds behind the Fouries. Behind them, brothers Keith and Andrew Macanetti set the Class B pace in a Zarco, with the pair edging out perennial rivals Kutsia and Sandra Labuskachny by 23 seconds, with the father and daughter pairing out in the Race Sonic Zarco.
Even little people have fun at off-road racing, and the special vehicle battle lines were drawn, with four-wheel drive perhaps giving Evan Hutchison and Dani Stassen a very slight edge.
It was a tight time trial and it was very loose underfoot, very dry, so a lot of dust and very, very loose. So the four-wheel drive, not that it was tight, but that gave us the traction, so that worked in our favour.
I think it's a bit difficult for us with a heavier car in the softer terrain, tighter, and I believe that the rest of the loop will be more tighter than the prologue. So it will be a day too. It will be hard work tomorrow.
Everyone dreams of a trip around the world, but this is no pleasure cruise. 9 months of sleep deprivation, hunger, extreme cold, debilitating heat, and navigating a 21-meter yacht through 72,000 kilometers of raging seas. Survival is the ultimate prize. The Volvo Ocean Race, exclusive to Supersport, proudly brought to you by DHL. Excellence simply delivered.
Ladies and gentlemen, from South Africa,
it's just a golf course. No more, no less.
following in the footsteps of City Biospheric State and others.
Sure, it is just a golf course. But in the first week of December, magic happens.
Vistas any prettier than this one right now at sunset.
The Nedbank Golf Challenge, Africa's major, live and exclusive to Supersport. Proudly brought to you by Nedbank.
Race day with hardly a cloud in the sky, and everything pointed to the day turning into a scorcher. Dry conditions out on the route meant dust was going to be a major problem, and Donaldson prologue results indicated a couple of the crews involved in the production vehicle championship fight were in for a tough day. Duncan Force and Rob Howie were scheduled to start 26th, with Terence Marsh and George Smallberger 42nd, and Thomas Rundle and Juan Moore 47th. Leading the production vehicle category from 5th was Rubicon crew Labuskachny and Erasmus.
Ek voel 'n bietjie druk, maar nie te groot nie. Ek dink ons vat dit nie te moeilik om voor te ry nie, maar dit gaan 'n bietjie stowwerig wees. Daar's 4 beds voor ons, so dit gaan moeilik gaan.
The final countdown to the start produces a gradual increase in pre-race tension, with off-road enthusiasts mingling with competitors and technical crews. Off-road racing is a family-orientated sport, and there's an interaction among teams and spectators that's not often found in other branches of motorsport. 4 special vehicles were scheduled to start before the first production vehicle, with races these days run in real time and crews setting off according to their Donaldson Prologue times. Teams in the production and special vehicle categories compete in what are effectively 2 races within a race, and gone are the days when cars set off at 2-minute intervals known as dust gaps.
The system of running races in real time and with cars starting according to their prologue performance sees to it that there is plenty of action from the moment the race gets underway. Unless there are exceptional circumstances, the real-time system also ensures that cars out on the route are running in race order, and this makes it easier for enthusiasts to follow the fortunes of their favorite teams.
The Donaldson Prologues that precede all races on the ABSA Off-Road Championship calendar always produces close times in midfield. Watching batches of production and special vehicles engaging in immediate combat provides spectators with an exciting spectacle and produces plenty of early race drama. It also keeps the starters busy.
The first 60 kilometers of the race will follow the route utilized for the Donaldson Prologue the previous day. The course then swung further west across the Carltonville Road towards Saferbult and included farmlands, rocky sections and virgin terrain.
With a clear road ahead of them and no dust problem, Evan Hutchison and Donnie Stassen needed to take full advantage of the situation. Hutchison's championship chances were hanging by a thread, and the Motorite Revo crew had no option but to push as hard as they could. A promising start soon ran into a hiccup when the pair were forced to stop because of a puncture. That handed the advantage to Hutchison's championship rivals Herman and Wichert Sulwat, but the Palabora father and son team were having a little trouble finding the right route. The Sulwats were crawling along in long grass, but in these circumstances, discretion is the better part of valor, and hidden rocks and tree stumps can lead to instant retirement.
Once they were back on the right track, the Sulwalds were able to pick up the pace and moved into the race lead when they went past Evan Hutchison and Donnie Stassen, who were busy changing wheels. The Motorite Revo crew also lost places to teammates Mick and Ryan Harper in the Motorite Bat, and KwaZulu-Natal pair Clint Gibson and Gary Campbell, who were running strongly about half a minute behind the Harpers.
Hutchison and Stassen then lost another place to production vehicle leaders Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus in the Rubicon Racing Toyota Hilux. When the Motorite Revo got going again, it was immediately passed by Brett Parker and VZ van Sail in the Cincinnati Jimco, and Hutchison's title chances were suddenly starting to look very bleak. From a position of strength at the front of the field, Hutchison and Stassen were now in a dust zone, where overtaking was easier said than done, and looming up behind them were Nandis and Louis Alberts, who had built up a head of steam in the Rapsa Bat.
The countryside was swathed in clouds of dust, with Nardis and Louis Alberts running ahead of the Team Ford Ranger of reigning production vehicle champions Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst, who started the race with a 5-point championship lead over Visser's brother Jannie and Joks Leroux in the international truck Toyota Hilux. The Ford crew were just over a minute behind production vehicle leaders Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus, and were being chased by the Atlas Copco Bat of Johan van Staden and James Rousseau. Slotted in behind the Pretoria crew were Class P leaders Marius and Yolanda Ferrie in the PHB Bat.
The versatile Anthony Taylor and Chris Birkin made a steady start to the race in the Team Castrol Toyota Hilux. Taylor is a multiple circuit racing champion who won his first SA title as a 16-year-old and was looking for his third RFS Magalies 400 win in a row after previous successes with Robin Houghton. The pair picked up a place on the road when they went past Marius and Yolanda Ferrie, and then the bane of an off-roader's life struck, and further progress was halted by a puncture. That lifted Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux, the season surprise package, into third in the international truck Toyota Hilux. Problems for Taylor and Birkin also saw RFS BMW X3 veterans Hannes Grobler and Hini ter Steege move up a place among the production vehicles. And they also picked up a place on the road when they went past Gerard and Kobe du Plessis, who were also changing wheels.
For a car only completed 24 hours before the start of the race, the RFS BMW, now fitted with a V8 petrol engine in place of a diesel unit, was going pretty well. The BMW was sounding healthy, but was being chased down by the du Plessis, who were up and running again and lost no time in winning back the place they had earlier lost to Grobler and ter Steege. Grobler and ter Steege won the opening event of the year, but a lean patch in mid-season had eliminated them from the championship race.
The Ruacon Racing pair of brothers David and Gary White have come on in leaps and bounds this season. But with co-driver Gary unavailable for this event, Cape-based Etienne Besaidnout stepped into the breach. White and Besaidnout picked up a place on the road when they went past Anthony Taylor and Chris Birkin, but steaming up behind them were reigning champions and championship leaders Collie and Quinton Silwatt, who were hit with a Donaldson prologue body blow that left them with work to do if they were to make sure of 7th place or better to secure back-to-back championships.
The Silwalds quickly picked up a place when they went past the Unifreight Ford Ranger of Kobus van Tonder and son-in-law Freddie Creel. Making up positions is never easy in dusty conditions, and much depends on cooperation from the crew being overtaken. Picking up a place by going past a stranded Clip Weichelt and Johan Smalberger was no problem, and then Malcolm Koch and Johan Berger kindly moved out of the way in the Koch & Sons Toyota Hilux. In a short space of time, the elegant field bat had made up 3 places on the road.
The Regent Racing Nissan Navara crew of Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson were among the production vehicle championship contenders, but were next on the list for Collie and Quinton Silwatt. The reigning special vehicle champions were making short work of production vehicle crews, with Whitehouse and Carlson also politely moving out of the way to let the Silwatts go steaming past. The Regent Racing crew were taking a conservative approach and lost another place to Malcolm Koch and Johan Berger, who were also among the 7 production vehicle crews that started the day with that mathematical shot at winning the title. For Koch and Berger, the title chance was purely mathematical, and they had to win the race with all the crews ahead of them failing to score points. For all that, the Northwest crew were going along steadily, and it also passed Class D leaders Dion Venter and Ian Palmer in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux. Venter and Palmer were the reigning champions, but a dodgy spell early in the season saw them drop out of contention, with a consistent LMC Land Rover crew of Jack and Sardel Oosthuizen taking control of the championship. Behind Venter and Palmer, the Free State pair of Kobus van Tonder and Freddie Creel were having a steady run and would die for a good result in the nicely turned out Unifreight Ford Ranger.
Brothers Eduardo and Ricardo Agazi from the Democratic Republic of the Congo added an international flavor to proceedings, with the pair under a little pressure from another Free State crew in Peter Ruthven and Rudy Brits, who were out in a second Rubicon Racing bat. Both Agazis and the Free Staters were being closed down by Duncan Voss and Rob Howie in the second Team Castrol Toyota Hilux. A disappointing prologue also left former champion Voss and Howie with plenty of work on the championship front. The pair will tackle the Dakar Rally in South America in January with Imperial Toyota teammate Janil de Villiers and Dirk van Zitzewitz, and it did not take Voss and Howie long to dispose of first Ruthven and Brits and then the Agazi brothers.
A disappointing prologue had also left Gary Bertelt and Andre Vermeulen with plenty of work in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux, which, like the factory cars, is now V8 powered. Bertelt and Vermeulen were also closing in on Peter Ruthven and Rudy Brits, as well as Eduardo and Ricardo Agazi, and behind them there was a close battle between the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser of Louis Weichelt and Francis Bourgeois and the Orange Works Porter in the hands of Daniel and Lau Zili. They were being chased by yet another father and son crew in Hichu and Jaap de Bruin, with the Micron XL Toyota Hilux also the victim of Donaldson prologue woes. Mpumalanga brothers Johan and Werner Horn had decided on taking a cautious approach in the Malalan Toyota Land Cruiser and were running ahead of early Class B leaders Keith and Andrew Machanete in their Zarko.
Llamas are apparently a popular breed in the Tarleton area, but this lot didn't fancy being caught on camera. While they trotted off into the distance, Dirk Pitter and Koos Claessens were busy starting to take control of Class C in the Zizwe Toyota Hilux. Charging along behind them were Terence Marsh and George Smallberger, who were having to mount a rearguard action after their prologue trials and tribulations. They zipped past the Transcore Toyota of Deirdre Cutting and Buck Cilliers and quickly picked up another place when teenagers Jason Venter and Vincent van Alleman moved out of the way in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux. Marsh and Smallberger were then gifted another place when Dion Boyens and Quibus Ferrie found themselves at odds with the roadbook. After sorting out the roadbook, Boyens and Ferrie then lost a second or two at a 90-degree turn.
It all added up to Boyens and Ferrie falling into the clutches of Coetzee and Sandra Labuschagne in the Raconic Zarko, who had Deirdre Cutting and Buck Cilliers hot on their heels in the Transcore Toyota Hilux. At this stage, Hunting and Cilliers were more than 3.5 minutes behind class leaders Dirk Pitter and Koos Claessens.
Championship contenders Thomas Rundle and Juan Moore also suffered from Donaldson prologue woes, which did not do their title hopes much good. Then matters got a whole lot worse when they rolled the Baden Racing Nissan Navara 2 kilometers from the start.
The body language said it all.
Novak Djokovic entered the Wimbledon final on the verge of fulfilling a lifelong dream.
Tasting the grass on centre court. He's the new world #1 in every sense.
Novak Djokovic, the world #1 and Wimbledon champion on your World of Champions.
I run the city.
The HSBC Sevens World Series. Live and exclusive to Supersport, your World of Champions.
The route back to the designated service park at Tarleton Raceway took competitors from Syferbult back towards the Sluisrandjies, where the course joined the last 30 kilometers of the Donaldson prologue route. A spectator-friendly event was peppered with vantage points for enthusiasts.
The backdrop provided for a typically peaceful South African rural scene with hardly a cloud in the sky and no hint of the drama that can unfold on a national championship off-road race. Herman and Wichert Solwald were now out in front of the entire field in the Solwald Racing SVR. But one of the disadvantages of being first car on the road is that people sometimes forget to open farm gates for off-road traffic.
Jumping in and out of race cars to open gates is a time-wasting exercise, and in any event, off-road cars are of sturdy construction. To their credit, the Solwalds opened the gates as gently as possible and were soon underway and building up towards racing speed. Behind the Solwald Racing SVR, the Rubicon Racing Toyota Hilux of Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus was still out in front of the production vehicle field and sounding healthy.
The route was now entering the notorious RFS Magalies mountain section, and retirements and mechanical niggles had taken Nandis and Louis Alberts from 5th to 2nd among the special vehicles. Johan van Staden and James Rousseau had also moved up 3 places in the Atlas Copco BAT, and there were also changes in the production vehicle category, where Jannie Visser and Jorgs Leroux were now 2nd, with reigning champions Chris Visser and Japie Baardnorst out of the race.
Off-road crews are issued with road books, a GPS system is compulsory, and the route is also marked with orange Dayglow stickers, and still they get lost. The sequence of race cam footage shows 4 of the most experienced crews in the ABSA Championship riding around in circles and tripping over each other.
Involved in this little comedy that would have kept the Keystone cops happy were Hannes Grobler and Henny ter Steege, Evan Hutchison and Donnie Stassen, Anthony Taylor and Chris Birkin, and Herman and Wichert Silva. Settle back for a few moments and enjoy the fun. Excuse me, do you know the way?
It's hard to tell who eventually found the right route, but race cam footage from the Hutchison-Stassen Motorride Revo shows a clear road ahead. Hutchison and Stassen were then quickly overhauled by Hannes Grobler and Henny ter Steege, with what started out as a test drive in the RFS BMW X3 now starting to take on a different meaning. Grobler and ter Steege won the opening event of the season with the BMW X3 then powered by a V8 diesel motor. 3 non-finishers followed and effectively put the veteran pair out of the championship running. Second place on the Sun City 400 was followed by another non-finish when the decision was taken to fit the BMW with the V8 petrol engine. It was a move that looked to be paying early dividends.
While Grobler and ter Steege went on their merry way, Nick and Ryan Harper had been reduced to spectators with the motorized bat or the combat.
Stopped at the light check, and as we pulled off, the side shaft just broke. No drive, no.
Bloemfontein-based David White and stand-in co-driver Etienne Besadenhout were having a steady drive in the Rubicon bat, with retirements also moving them up a place or 2 among the special vehicles. Cape-based Besadenhout was standing in for White's brother David, who had business commitments, and the pair were just ahead of Hannes Grobler and Henny ter Steege, and were then passed at a rapid rate of knots by Cully and Quinton Sewald, who were on track to grab the top 7 finish they needed to make sure of back-to-back special vehicle championships.
On the run-in, the compulsory 15-minute stop at the designated service point was waiting. Anthony Taylor and Chris Birkin were running a solid 4th in the Team Castrol Toyota Hilux. 2 second places were all they had to show for what had been a disappointing season for Taylor and Birkin, with a near miss on the Toyota 1000 Desert Race particularly disappointing. A maiden win on the Toyota Dealer 400 and consistent results kept Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson in the championship hunt, but the pair were now nearly 6 minutes behind production vehicle leaders Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus. The Regent Racing Nissan Navara was being chased by Gerard and Kobie du Plessis, and behind them, Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen were pushing hard in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux.
The notorious mountain section then provided for more drama when Evan Hutchison and Donnie Stassen came labouring up the hill only to grind to a halt in a cloud of dust metres before a switchback corner.
Clouds of dust heralded the approach of a string of cars, and KwaZulu-Natal pair Clint Gibson and Gary Campbell managed to squeeze the Gibson Racing Porter past the stranded motorride car, which had lost 4-wheel drive. More dust heralded more and more cars starting to arrive on the scene, and Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen also managed to edge their Atlas Copco Toyota past the motorride car, which was now blocking the road.
A string of cars had by now piled up behind the motorride Revo, with Evan Hutchison not able to get any traction from the front wheels. Donnie Stassen was packing rocks under and around the wheels, while frustrated crews waited impatiently for something to happen. After a lengthy delay, Hutchison managed to get enough traction to get the motorride Revo onto the side of the track, and Hicho and Jaap de Bruin were the first of the crews lined up behind to get going again.
You can bet that there were a few choice words further back. The backlog of cars held up behind the motorride car slowly dissipated, but more significantly, the incident also heralded the end of Evan Hutchison's championship hopes.
First car into the designated service area was the Sewald Racing SVR of Herman and Wichert Sewald, with the broken shock absorbers spoiling what had been a good morning's work for the Palabora father and son crew.
Evan got a puncture early in the lap, so we were doing the route finding. At some stages it was long grass, a lot of rocks, But we've got a good run. I see that one of the shocks is damaged, but I haven't got a spare, so we'll just carry on like that.
Oh, it's rough. The dust is amazing. You can't get close to the guys, so we've managed to open a bit of a gap. We're keeping a gap between us and the guys behind us, so we got a comfortable spot. The forest section made the guys get lost, so there's a lot of confusion going on there. We moved up quite far in Class A, I think. I think we're about the third. It's going well. Third in class at the moment.
Dis baie stowwerig, maar dit gaan goed. Die kar hou versigtig ry, baie klippe, daar's baie plekke wat jy kan uitvang. Dit gaan rof, is lekker. Ons het lank voorgery tot ons 'n papiel gekry het, maar ons het dan vinnig gery en goed weet op die pad. So ek dink nie ons lê te sleg op die stadium.
We're having a good run. No problem so far, just changing some tyres now to hopefully make it to the end without any problems at the back.
Yeah, we're doing well. The car's performing very well. Made up some places. Just got to keep our eyes open for the lurkers. There's a lot of rocks and stumps and things around, but we're doing well.
You can't believe how much dust is out there. We've been chasing each other meters apart in the dust, and it's just a red cloud as far as you go. Luckily, it looks like the wind is coming up now. It can help us a lot, but it's rocks and it's bad. It's just one big fight out there at the moment.
Yeah, we rolled not even a kilometre away from here. But we're going again and we should be okay. We're catching quite nicely. So just dust is bad, our screamer's not working. Try and fix everything out quickly.
The running order at the halfway mark had the Stalwarts ahead of Nandus and Louis Alberts, with Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux leading the production vehicle brigade ahead of Hannes Grobler and Henny ter Steege.
Okay, lights, camera action. It's more fun than you can imagine. The glitz, the glamour, party all the time. Yep, VIP style, more stars in the sky. If you like what you see, then see what you like, and you'll never get bored. We're gonna excite you. Yeah, whether boy or a girl, make your couch the globe and sit on top of the world. Click, click. I can show you what's on the news. Show you the new movie from Dude. You think my music video is cool? You bet I got something for you too. Hey, get your crew over last year groove and in I got no cause I mean I ask man move. Hey, okay, now the scoops ya boots when you pump this shape because ya tabuga. Pump it. And I say, get your crew over last year groove and in I got no cause I mean I ask man move. Hey, okay, now the scoops ya boots when you pump this shape because ya tabuga. Pump it.
Into the early stages of the second and last loop of the race with the Special Vehicle Championship, now a straight fight between race leaders Herman and Wichert Suwald and Kali and Quinton Suwald, who had to finish in the top 7 to clinch the title. Almost unnoticed, Nardus and Louis Alberts had slotted into a steady second place among the specials, with the Raps a bat sounding healthy.
Farm animals are disinterested spectators on off-road races, but after an up-and-down season, Johan van Staden and James Rousseau were looking to finish on a high note in the latest Spec Atlas Copco bat and were well placed for a podium finish. It was in the production vehicle category where the betting book had been turned upside down and unheralded Northwest crew Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux out in front in the International Truck Toyota Hilux and in the box seats where the championship was concerned. Visser and Leroux were being chased by Hannes Grobler and Henny ter Steege, who were no threat from a championship point of view. The major incentive for Grobler and ter Steege was to give RFS a victory in their own race.
The makeshift combination of David White and Etienne Besadenhout was still going along steadily with no hint of a problem for the Rubicon Racing crew. They had slotted into a comfort zone in the top 5 among the special vehicles, but were starting to come under a little pressure from Kali and Quinton Suwald, who had put themselves into a championship-winning situation. Behind the Suwalds, the Rubicon Toyota Hilux in the hands of Donaldson Prologue winners Pikkie Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus had slipped back to third. They were just under 3 minutes behind production vehicle leaders Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux and had around 3 minutes to spare over Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara. The drive of the day had come from Team Castrol Toyota pair Duncan Force and Rob Howie, who started 26th on the road and had carved their way through the field, with the pair again showing the ability to turn poor prologues into good races.
The husband and wife team of Marius and Yolanda Free were still running strongly at the front of the Class B contingent in the PHB BAT and were also on track for a top 5 finish. Behind them, Dion Venter and Ian Palmer had a tight grip on Class D in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux, with the outgoing champions also looking at a top 5 overall finish in the production vehicle category. Venter and Palmer running ahead of Louis Weichelt and Francis Bushma, who were having an adventurous run in the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser. The steering kept working loose, and to make life more interesting, the car kept jumping out of gear. The Atlas Copco bat of Richard Fuller and substitute co-driver Dennis Murphy, who was standing in for the injured Jeff Millett, was sandwiched between Weichelt and his father Cliff, and Johan Smallberger in the second N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser. Weichelt Sr. now lives in Australia and, where possible, likes to make sure that business trips to South Africa coincide with rounds of the ABSA Championship.
The Class E battle was still being dominated by Dirk Pitter and Chris Claessens, who were on course to score their third win in 4 outings in the Zizwe Toyota Hilux. Pitter was still in line to win the Class E Drivers' Championship, while Claessens had already wrapped up the Co-Drivers' Championship. A future award winner putting in a little practice, and not far behind the Toyota were Kutsia and Sandra Labuskaghni, who had taken over the Class B lead after the retirement of friendly rivals Keith and Andrew Macanetti. The Labuskaghnis were running just ahead of Deirdre Hutting and Buck Saliers in the Transcore Toyota, with Hutting only having to finish to win the driver's title. Behind them, Archie Rutherford and Mike Lawrenson were in the same boat, with the Regent Racing Jimco crew only needing to finish to win the Class P title ahead of Marius and Yolanda Fourie. Rutherford and Lawrenson were overall winners of last year's RFS Magaliesburg 400, but this time around were quite content to drive for the championship.
Into the closing stages of the RFS Magaliesburg 400, with Herman and Vichard Sulwat firmly in control of proceedings at the front of the overall field and the special vehicle category. It also left the Special Vehicle Championship interestingly poised, with everything hinging on where reigning champions and championship leaders Cully and Quinton Sulwat finished in the overall results. A broken shock absorber picked up on the first loop of the race was also probably a blessing in disguise. It meant the Sulwats had to concentrate on keeping to the track and eliminated the risk of the crew trying to push too hard and then running into trouble. As it was, the Sulwats had a comfortable lead over Nandis and Louis Alberts, who'd enjoyed a trouble-free run and never had to get out of the car at all.
Local youngsters were enjoying some weekend entertainment, while Pretoria crew Johan van Staden and James Rousseau were more than happy with a tight grip on a podium finish in the Atlas Copco BAT. Van Staden and Rousseau were running ahead of new production car leaders Hannes Grobler and Henny Tristege, who were on track for a fairy tale victory first time out in the petrol-powered RFS BMW X3. It is not often that new race cars win first time out, but Grobler and Tristege had used all their vast experience to drive a copybook race. The veteran crew went into the lead when the unfortunate Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux picked up a puncture in the International Truck Toyota Hilux. Compensation for the Northwest crew was the knowledge that second place would be enough to give them the Production Vehicle Championship. Behind Visser and Leroux, early race leaders Pekkie Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus were battling fuel pressure problems in the Rubicon Toyota Hilux and were coming under a late attack from Rubicon teammates David White and Etienne Besadenhout, who had put together a workmanlike performance in the Rubicon Racing BAT.
Disappointing performance on the Friday prologue probably blew Duncan Voss and Rob Howie out of the Production Vehicle Championship race, but the Team Castrol Toyota Hilux pair had come up with a stellar performance nonetheless. From 26 on the start line, they charged through the field, and under the circumstances, fourth place was a brilliant result for the pair. Voss is a multiple South African track and off-road champion who's known for his fighting qualities, and these are attributes he and Howie will need in abundance when they tackle the Dakar Rally for the first time in January. While spectators relax, it's hard work for crews, but Marius and Yolanda Fourie had come up with another impressive performance to lead Class P by a healthy margin. The husband and wife pair were running less than a minute ahead of brothers Eduardo and Ricardo Argazi from the DRC, who picked up their best result of the season. There was also a season best for Peter Ruthven and Rudy Brits since they returned to the ABSA Championship in the second Rubicon Racing bat.
There was another top-notch performance from Class D winners Dion Venter and Ian Palmer, who also grabbed a top 5 finish in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux. It was their 4th victory of the season, but a poor run early on ruined the hopes of clinching back-to-back championships. Behind Venter and Palmer, the Atlas Copco bat of Richard Fuller and Dennis Murphy was still sandwiched between the 4x4 Mega World Toyota and the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser of Louis Weichelt and Francis Bushma.
It was also a brave fight back from Terence Marsh and George Smallberger in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara, but they were to lose out on winning the Premier SP class by just half a point to Jannie Visser and Yorks Leroux. Behind the Nissan, punctures and an oil cooler problem hampered Anthony Taylor and Chris Birkin in what was a disappointing end to the season for the Team Castrol Toyota crew.
Bloemfontein pair Lodebrain and Rian Greiling also had to fight a rearguard action in the Rubicon Racing Ford Ranger, and fellow Free Staters Quibus van Tonda and Freddie Kriel struggled with a fuel pressure problem in the Unifreight Ford Ranger, but finished in spectacular fashion. Behind them, the factory Ford Ranger crew of Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable never recovered from a disappointing prologue and also picked up their first puncture in 2 seasons. The Pietermaritzburg crew were followed home by track racer Henny de Klerk, who impressed in only his 2nd race, and Keith Solomon in the LA Sport Toyota Hilux.
As the midfield runners started to come home, the focus shifted to Cully and Quinton Sulwat, who had gone missing. Keith du Toit and Ashley Thorne were 9th overall among the specials in the White Star Racing bat, as news filtered through that the Sulwats were stuck 10 kilometers from the finish line. Du Toit and Thorne were followed by impressive Class E winners Dirk Pitter and Koos Claessens, and after a Donaldson prologue disaster, Nick Gosler and Andrew Massey did well to fight back and clinch a top 10 finish in the Men's Health International Zarco.
Perseverance paid off for Cliff Weichelt and Johan Smallberger in the 2nd of the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruisers, and they were a solid 3rd in Class D. The Class B win for Kutsia and Sandra Labuskachny in the Race Sonic Zarco gave Sandra the Co-Drivers' Championship ahead of Andrew Macanetti, and 4th place in Class P was enough to give Regent Racing Jim Cope, Archie Rutherford and Mike Lawrenson the championship honours. Behind the Regent pair, Class D champions Jack and Sorrel Oosthuizen had the distinction of being the only crew with a 100% finish, with the LMC Land Rover team seeing out the distance on all 8 events.
Another championship was clinched when Diedrich Hutting and Buck Sillier brought the Transcore Toyota Hilux home in 2nd place in Class E. That gave the consistent Hutting the driver's title ahead of Dirk Pitter. Behind them, it had been a tough day for Mpumalanga-based brothers Johan and Werner Horn in the Malalan Toyota Land Cruiser, but perseverance also paid off for a crew who made only sporadic appearances during the 2011 season.
The season also produced some exciting new talent like teenagers Jason Venter and Vincent van Alleman in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota, with the youngsters finishing 3rd in the Class E Championship in their rookie year. At the other end of the scale, a battle-scarred veteran in Wolf-Peter Fumfai soldiered on manfully in the home-built WPP single-seater and clinched 3rd place in the Class B Drivers' Championship.
Back at Tolton International Raceway, a big crowd was on hand to welcome home Herman and Wichard Solwald, who brought the Solwald Racing SVR home ahead of another father and son crew in Nodis and Louis Alberts in the Rapsa bat. The final podium place went to Johan van Staden and James Rousseau in the Atlas Copco bat, with just 90 seconds separating the top 3 crews.
The final results, and with Cully and Quinton Sulwalt listed among the non-finishers, victory on the RFS Magalies 400 saw Herman and Wichard Sulwalt win the South African Special Vehicle Championship.
RFS Managing Director Chris de Ploy was on hand to do the podium honours, with Wichard Sulwalt at 23, the youngest overall champion in ABSA Championship history.
Yeah, it was, and I think, as I said earlier to some of the fellow competitors, this is the first time that I was really scared to start this morning with all the rocks, and we knew that we had to do excellent to have a chance. And we were fortunate to have a clean run. A little bit of a problem with the shocks at the back, but not that bad. So we had a clean run, and yes, we've made it. And then the nervousness was there for Cully to see when is he coming in, and unfortunately they had a problem. 10 Ks out, and they didn't make it. So yeah, I didn't expect it, but we're very happy.
Talk about keeping it in the family. The final championship positions with Herman and Wichert Sewald 8.5 points ahead of outgoing champions Cully and Quinton Sewald.
And the RFS Cup was filled to overflowing when veterans Hannes Grobler and Henny ter Steege brought home the RFS BMW X3 at the front of the production car field. It was a fairy tale win, but the production car war was won by Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux, who limped home in the International Truck Toyota Hilux to win the Production Vehicle Championship. The final place on the podium went to the Rubicon team of Pikkie Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus.
The final results with Hannes Grobler and Henny ter Steege finishing just over a minute ahead of the new South African champions. There were also top-class performances from Venter Palmer and Weichelt Bushma in Class D.
Once again, Chris de Plooy was on hand to do the honours on the podium, and after winning the first event of the season, Hannes Grobler and Henny ter Steege finished on the same high note.
We're very, very chuffed. The last week or so, the guys worked very hard in the workshop to get the car ready, and we wanted the car to be here to try and win our event and to test it, to try and win the championship in next year. And I think the first step to next year, we've done well today, so we're very happy with that.
At the start of the season, you could have named your own odds on Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux winning the Production Car Championship. The pair never won an event, but solid finishes and 3 podiums saw the Northwest veterans crowned South African Production Vehicle Champions.
Ja, ons is baie bly. Ek het nou nie vanoggend gedink dit sal so uitwerk nie. Ons het vanoggend weggespring, dus ek vir Joks, ons moet maar net in die pad bly. En lyk my dit het maar die ding gedoen vandag.
The final production vehicle points tally with Visser and Leroux in the end comes to be clear of Duncan Vos and Visser's brother Chris with Japie Badenhorst. The top 10 was also made up entirely of SP class crews.
The team of the event award went to Rubicon Racing crew David White and Etienne Besadenhout, who immediately donated a 5,000 rand cheque from ABSA to the Sunfield Homes charity, which for more than 20 years has held a special place in the hearts of the off-road community.
The off-road has chosen a charity. It's Sunfield Homes Down Syndrome Children. We've been doing it for nearly 30 years. I think it might be 30 years. We like to give back what we take out of life, and we raise a lot of money for them. We give them a great day. They can go for rides in the off-road cars. We have got people that help us, the Rotary organisation, and also the Harley Davidson come along and give the kids a ride. So it's a day in the sun, hopefully, to share with these children and to say Merry Christmas to them.
A fitting way to end the 2011 ABSA Off-Road Championship with the annual Sunfield Homes Christmas party another resounding success. The South African off-road community were looking to set a new record at one of South African motorsport's longest-running charity events. The Sunfield Homes Day at Tarleton International Raceway this year celebrated its 23rd birthday, with funds going to Sunfield Homes and Logwood Village, which cater for people suffering from Down syndrome.
The Charity Day is organised in conjunction with the Rotary Merlins Club based in Roodepoort, and for the second year, the Harley Davidson Club was also a part of the event.
Morning rides in the off-road cars and Harley Davidsons are followed by Punch and Judy and magician shows, with the highlight of the day for the children, a visit by Santa Claus himself. From the ABSA Off-Road Championship TV crew,
we wish you and yours a blessed festive season.